Radio on urbannationradio.com. You just checked out a brief clip, well, 10-minute, kind of brief clip of identifying the hidden mechanisms of fractional reserve banking, fiat currency on a macro scale. And so hopefully that was useful and something that you can digest and take a look at. We'll post a link to on our Facebook page as well, and in the feed on the live feed as well. And so I want to, Kojo, what were you getting out of the video that you want to kind of elaborate on, or you want to draw out some points? Because there was a lot of information that was really given.
Absolutely, and that actual link to that video is on my page right now, and also it's already on the Urban Nation Radio page, Facebook page. So you can check out. It's 30 minutes roughly total. So we just saw about a third of it. The video to me, for me, and also coupled with information I had prior to watching the video, made it really clear of how it's always going to be a poor class, for one, because any person just starting off in that system has nothing, and the system is designed as a trap. And so even if 200,000 people start off tomorrow with nothing, and some of them quote unquote become successful, a large amount of them will struggle, because a big part of it also is our education system doesn't teach us the way that video taught us. So most people go into the system thinking, oh, all I gotta do is X, Y, and Z, and I'll be financially successful, and whatnot. But again, there's so many pitfalls. There's taxes. There's automobiles. We didn't even go into the credit cards, which is a whole different ball game. One thing that the video didn't really cover, and I don't think we haven't really covered yet, is when you see a system like that, you begin to understand why we have bankruptcy and why we have bailouts, because at some point the system is supposed to collapse. Because if the government and I'm operating under 2,000% debt, then eventually I should just go bankrupt and have no money. But what I do instead is I just go to my debtors and say, hey, will you forgive me? Which is what we call a bailout. Is it okay if I just give you a little bit of money back, which is called a bankruptcy? And so those things are intrinsically designed into a fiat currency so that it can survive, because without bankruptcies, without bailouts, the system collapses. And without paying income tax, the system collapses faster, because if they give me $1 and I give them back 70 cents, that prevents them from having to print more money, because they got some of it back. But if they have to print more money, now again they inflate the prices because the money pool has grown. And again, there has to be a poor class, because if there's no poor class for all of that to rest on, then you don't have anybody to put in slavery.
Yeah, I want to clarify and then let you finish. The debt isn't just forgiven. This is something that the like you said, the poor class or the lower class and some of the middle class have to pay off through their wages, and lose through inflation, lose through taxes, lose through all of these totalitarian measures. And I give you the direct example that I can give you is in Detroit, just went into a fraudulent bankruptcy, and one of the things that came out or it led up to that is they just decided that the retirees, the baby boomers that were people that were retiring and that had had their money saved up going into a pension, which is their money. They decided they're going to take 30% of that, and it was unheard of, unprecedented that you could just say that you're going to take this money that's not yours, and this is impacting a whole generation. And these are people with the most safety net, honestly, because the in our generation and younger than us don't have a thing coming, and my grandma told me that from day one. She said that we won't have a thing coming to her, and she would never have thought that her pension would be snatched. Imagine you saving up your whole life and then somebody taking 30% of that, and that's what. So it's not just they make a deal with the creditor, would be China, or which would be another country or another company of the private bankers, but that is still paid through the people that are working, people that are still working and taking larger and larger chunks of their money, raising, increasing inflation. And Nippo keeps on to talk about inflation when he does his go around. I just wanted to clarify. That for you.
That was a good segue too into something my nephew. They have to teach the children early economics and get them away from this stuff because children are too smart. They think on a different level unless they get conditioned not to. But my nephew, he was like, so the church bankrupt? And I was like, yeah, that's what they say. He said, but ain't they building a new stadium? And I was like, you're smart. You get it. You understand. And so, again, at the same time we're building a new stadium, we're taking 30% of, police, bus driver, all their pension. They're just taking it. And, the video hit on war a little bit, which is a big part of our economic state. Again, thinking that, the U.S. owns our creditors, China. China stock market just went down 40%. So you see the same game starting to be played over there. In my opinion, what they do is they present something to the U.S. population to experiment to see how it works, and whatever works really well, they export around the world. And again, this Federal Reserve System started in 1913, and there's a lot of information in that video. I highly recommend watching it. Again, you can bring a friend over. We got to get this information out to the people.
We're going to get into solutions, definitely, and talk about what it is we have to lay out and give context to some of these things that we're bringing up, and some of these things just cannot be overemphasized, like the meaning of a debt-backed currency, or there's something that could be fiat, not tied to anything. And you want to go?
Yeah. Well, I just want to start off. I mean, since you mentioned war, and we already mentioned previously that the the Federal Reserve is just a collection of bankers, which loan money to the U.S. government, and then they loan money to us. And so we look at war, and then we look at who benefits from war, because you got to remember, in war, you got to have somebody to make the tanks, got to have somebody to make the missiles, to make the guns, to make the ammo, to provide the food, everything, all of that. So we got to look at who gets these contracts to supply all of this stuff, and then also the building contracts too, because they're right after they blow up, the civilians and the civilian homes and the infrastructure of the country that they're supposedly going to war with. They have to, contract that work out to rebuild that stuff. And so 90% of all of the money that is made from war goes to the top 1% richest people. They are the ones who own the companies that produce the weapons,
propagate the wars,
all of
media.
What was the company that Dick Cheney was the president?
Halliburton.
Yeah,
Halliburton, Raytheon,
right back.
DARPA, all of those people, are owned by the top 1%, and they get paid off war. So war is profitable. And then if we look at other people who tried to get off, that's one of the things that keep, that safety net to keep the faith in the U.S. dollar, is that it's the world reserve currency, which means everywhere currencies are bought and sold, the base currency is the U.S. dollar. And it's also called the petrodollar because that's what they purchase oil in. Mm-hmm. And so I have two examples of people who tried to get off of the U.S. dollar, and one was Iraq. In 2000, they tried to stop using the U.S. dollar, and they wanted to use the euro. We all know what happened September 11, 2001, which was 1 year after they tried that. And then we know, the subsequent wars after that, Iraq, Iran, all of that. And then the other one was Libya. They tried to stop using the U.S. dollar, and they wanted to use the gold dinar. And that was in 2009. And the person who tried to do that was Gaddafi. And then we know what happened to him in 2011.
People may not know.
He was publicly executed in 2011. And of course they're gonna try to say that it was something else, but it was really because he wanted to stop using the U.S. dollar and start using the gold dinar, which is a actually tangible currency as opposed to paper money.
I want to add just one more name. That's what's going on. Hugo Chavez. Now, he didn't necessarily try to use a different dollar or currency. He just went to his people and gave them oil. He was giving them free oil. And once again, our country and the media here did not like that. They made him seem like the worst guy ever. But we got to keep in mind, too, we had a guy here named Nikola Tesla who was trying to give out free energy. And he's still not really mentioned in schools. So, but yeah, there's the other people who, JFK, he wanted to get rid of the Federal Reserve System. So,
and just adding to that, the what Chavez in effect did was public. I don't know what the word is. he nationalized the oil market because that's their resource. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily a good thing for the earth. What I am saying is that being able to realize what resources are in your country that other people want, and then giving the people authority over that, or enriching the people, letting that benefit the people and not just private bankers, is the mindset that makes you an enemy to totalitarian governments and pretty much those that think that they police the world. That's what I thought you were going to get.
But just to understand what nationalizing is when the country comes to say, we own this now. So if you Citgo, or if you Mobile, whatever, BP, and you got a gas station, we coming telling you, get out, we coming in with our people. And that's what he did down in Venezuela.
Yeah, I think Citgo is actually one of the Venezuelan, connected to Venezuela in some way. I have to fact check that. Y'all can look it up.
Yeah, it was one more thing I wanted to mention too. In your piece, you said that when you come in, you start with nothing. I want to say that when you come in, you start with less than nothing. So because we are born into a debt-based system, 18 to 19 trillion dollars in debt at birth, that birth certificate, you're born into debt at $30,000 a head. So it's actually advantageous to the government for people to have kids. And if you look at where the population growth is amongst the poor people, because more than likely, the more educated you are, the later in life you'll have children, and the less children you're likely to have. Whereas the person who is having kids and they're getting government assistance and that kind of stuff, they tend to have more kids because they get tax breaks, they get federal assistance through housing, and they get EBT cards to help with food and that kind of stuff. So it's more advantageous to have kids for them than for the working man or woman, and that's because they're more likely to be a product of the system, because they're more likely to go to jail if you got less educated and less wealthy parents. And then also too, they stop upward mobility, which is pretty much at zero right now, which means like going from one financial class to another. So from going to low class to middle class, it's almost impossible now because they got the system set up and structured to where there is no upward mobility. Like, you know, if we're born into low class, more than likely we'll die in low class. If you're born into middle class, more than likely you'll die in middle class. Whereas it wasn't like that before. Like the baby boomers, a lot of them were born into low class, low income families, and then they worked hard. They, you know, saved money. They got good jobs per se, and they had upward mobility. But now that's at a standstill.
I'll even say that if you're born in middle class, if you continue what you're doing, you end up in the lower middle class or lower class.
Nobody's getting raises.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things that we kind of danced around but really didn't say is that what really is the driving force of our let's say the U.S. dollar being the global reserve currency. Is consumer, you'll hear the buzzword consumer confidence in the dollar. Consumer confidence. That's why you'll see, you know, in our lifetime, we used to, you know, brag about being able to go to Canada, you know, living in Detroit, being able to brag about going to Canada, and our dollar was worth maybe, 25 cents more, 25% more. Then, you know, and then over time you go back and it was like, okay, now it's only 10. Oh, okay, well at least it's still, you go back, it's like 3, and now it's Canadian dollar is back and forth, and that just shows you how confidence around the world is shifting over these last years, last 2 decades, and the point I'm getting at is that what drives this. What keeps the currency afloat is the fact that the United States is the military center for the world, and we enforce it, literally enforce it through force and through intimidation. Oh, you don't. I mean, we gave you examples of how a lot of times it's instigated or it's directly. I won't say direct action because that's not really what I mean. Direct influence in the politics of another country that's looking to do something different, or we just start wars. And so that's what's backing this. Like even when consumer confidence is going up and down, countries, you know, if you don't have the resources that you need, there's this big bully with all these guns and saying, use our money. We'll even give you some money, but use our money. But if you don't want to use our money, we got these guns, we got these tanks, we got these drones, and we own the media. So if you think you're gonna get some help from the United States people, we let them see what we want them to see. And so this is, we really want to encourage our viewers to have a very clear world view and look at how what's going on here is playing out in different parts of the world, because that'll give you the full picture. And some of these things don't seem believable until you look at history of empires that we talked about before. All empires that have used a fiat currency have fallen. All empires, period, have.
100%. He's saying all, which actually is inclusive of every single last one. Empire that has used a fiat currency has failed.
And so that was the point that I wanted to make it clear.
We got to wrap up, but just the average life of a fiat currency is 41 years. So actually, we are past due for